Thank you all for coming. I'd like to open tonight's meeting between the Select Board of Topsham and the Finance Committee for budgetary conversations.
So, good evening, everyone. Mark Waltz, the town manager. Thought first, we'll go around the room and do introductions. So we'll start with the assistant town manager.
Oh, Jeff Emerson, the assistant town manager.
Kathy Bricker, Finance Director.
Ryan Holmes, Select Board members.
Dave Kenny, select board.
Ann Callahan, Select Board.
Mike Labby, Select Board.
Gail Eaton, Finance Committee Chair.
Bill Thompson, Finance Committee.
Ellen Stein, Finance Committee.
Ruth Lyons, Finance Committee.
Vicky Bodie, Finance Committee.
Bob Dodge, Finance Committee.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. So we've got 3 nights. Tonight's the first one. We'll probably go to, my guess is 8:30, depends on how many questions or things come up. And we'll have same time the next 2 nights. I'm told by Dennis that probably the snow won't start until after tomorrow night. And after that, he said most of the snow is supposed to fall between Tuesday and Wednesday night, and it'll be like a light snow during the day Wednesday. So I think we should be able to still have Wednesday night. But if people get concerned and they're worried about coming out Wednesday, let me know and we can try to come up with a different plan, or we could do it more hybrid, because tonight is live on Zoom, so people could participate from the house if they wanted to. As far as process, please feel free to ask whatever questions you want. There's no question's a stupid one, and you may even stump us on some. So we reserve the right, if need be, to go back and do a little research and get back to you. Kathy will be here all the nights. She'll have all the answers. We'll be talking to her, she has all the answers. But so feel free at any point, raise your hand if you have a question, and whoever's presenting will be happy to address your question. So when I went into this year, my biggest goal was to try to keep the taxes as low as possible. The key word is they're possible. And I'll talk more about this in a few minutes, but the time's gone by. We had a few years, which now I know why Derek left when he did. It's not because it's like Eastport or Washington County. But what happened is we had a few years where we actually had steadily increasing revenues other than taxes, which made budgeting kind of nice. Derek's big worry was that if all of a sudden we took all those revenues and put them into the budget, we could end up significantly decreasing the taxes. And then that would be all well and good for a couple of years, but once those one-time revenues went away, you'd have a big spike. So Derek's goal, which I subscribe to as well, and which I tried to do this year, is that try to keep the tax increase, say 3 to 4% is the goal we were trying to shoot for. And we'll talk more about maybe how we're doing towards that as the night goes on. My other big goal in it started about 2 months ago. It's gonna likely continue in the next year, is managing the replacement of retiring department heads. We've got a lot of people that served Topsham for a lot of years, and the time has come for them to enjoy some retirement. So we've got significant staff turnover. So we're trying to pick the right people to keep the town moving forward, get some new energy. We've got one of our new energetic people here tonight. Into our new clerk, who's already coming up with new ideas for her office and things. Next is we want to make sure we're trying to maintain the infrastructure and equipment that we have. Gary Brown set this town up, I think, beautifully 20 years ago. Pretty much, these 2 buildings were built 20 years ago. The brick exterior, the trim had started to rot some, and Derek got that done with like PVC wood a couple of years ago. So that should be in good shape. We also had noticed that the rain splashing off the building onto the stone had been affecting the mortar. So we got the buildings repointed a couple of years ago. So as things come up, we've been addressing them. So we should be in good shape for the future as far as our municipal buildings go. And then we also want to start looking more towards the future. You'll hear some more talk tonight about the transfer station and some of the things that are there that are getting towards the end of the useful life, and we want to try to work to replace them. And so that'll be more tonight. But those are our goals for the year. So a little more on the department heads. I've been in this job 2 years. Same thing for Jeff. Kathy's the old timer. She's been the finance director for 5 years. Our police chief's been in place for 5 years. Amanda's brand new as of last month. Our fire chief, we hope to have one hired within the next week. Dennis gave his notice, our public works director, he was kind enough to give us a 6 months notice back in November. So we've hired our new public works director who's learning from him, and the deputy position we finally filled that we've been trying to fill for 2 years. We have our solid waste director has told us that he's probably gonna, if not retire at the end of this fiscal year, during fiscal year 27. Same thing for Parks and Recreation. Justin has not been allowed to talk about retirement, so he's the true old timer, I think, now of our department heads. But he's still young at heart, and he still thinks the Appalachian Trail.
Trials too.
So a little more on as far as revenues. If you remember when Governor Mills first came in, she said she wanted to get the state up to funding its full 5% revenue sharing. Same thing with 55% of essential education expenses. The interesting thing is, I think what they consider essential education expenses is only about 40% of the budget. So, but 55% of 40% is better than 37% of 40%. So for a while, there was more money coming in, as I mentioned. There was also more money during COVID. The town ended up getting about 900,000 from the federal government that was distributed that initially went to be part of the surplus and then get spent on some capital projects. So there, and the other thing that's happened is, those of you on the select board for a while may remember some discussion a few years back, and I can picture Dave Douglas saying this. He used to be upset about us having unfilled positions in the budget. Ruth, I'm sure, can go along with this. And he said, you're taxing people for stuff that you're not spending. And so I'd rather not have you tax them. So Kathy has carried that mantra to heart. And you'll notice that each year our budget has had less and less unspent money in it. So we've, I think, wrung out about as much as we can as far as unspent money in the budget too. So the bottom line of all that is, there's no more free money. If there's things that we want to increase in the budget, unfortunately, it's probably going to have to come to taxes, with a few exceptions. But we're always looking for other ways. And I'll tell you about a few minutes about one possible way next year that may come help us. So when we set the budget, we first worry about things we're legally required to do. Like, for instance, our TIFs have what's called a credit enhancement agreement. Many of them, we have to pay a certain amount of money back to the developer. So we have to pay that. We do have one more year left on our one remaining bond. So that's another legal required thing. Our union contracts have legal required things in them. Then after legal required things, public safety, public works, retaining our vehicles, and then general government. And all that we try to do while doing good fiscal management. So as far as this year, when we focused on infrastructure, the thing that we'd like to do is, at first, a couple years ago, we were hoping to do the Tedford Road. Initially, it was called the sidewalk project, but it became a rebuild because of the fact Tedford doesn't have a good road bed underneath, and to put the sidewalks on, you're gonna do drainage. So it basically is essentially a rebuild of Tedford Road. But we're not gonna have enough money to do it all this year. Under the current year's budget, we have an engineering meeting tomorrow to kick off for them to do the design for it. Then they're gonna give us a good estimate of what the actual cost is gonna be. So this year will be more putting money aside. We already have some money we've set aside for it. We'll be trying to set more aside for it. And then the actual next year will be the year we try to pull off the actual construction. We're also gonna be working to plan for the future. We have, we're gonna do an RFP in the next month or so to have the transfer station looked at by an engineer that specializes in it. The compactor's getting to the point it has to be replaced in the next few years. Good news is we're composting so much that we need an expanded composting pad that's at the transfer station. We also, it's time to think about scales if we're doing work out there. You know, we have to pay for all our trash by the ton that goes to Echo Maine, but we collect the revenue by the guess. You know, we have someone comes into the pickup truck, the staff says, looks like it's probably 2 yards, give me this amount of money or this amount of bags, or it would be easy for us to try to have the user fees pay the cost of the trash if we actually were weighing things. So that's something else that we should think about doing for the transfer station. The other thing we want to do is in the budget is support some of our community goals. The recode process has been ongoing. So hopefully that will get wrapped up this year. I know Sky will be glad that can get wrapped up because it's been never ending process. Workforce housing, trying to find a way to make more of this. It may not be a lot, but the affordable housing TIF over at Union Park will give us 10 units of true workforce housing, people at 80% of area median income. And the extent we can find ways to develop more of that, that's something we try to do. Increased bike and pedestrian opportunities. The thing I see as probably one of our more higher priorities here, other than the Tedford Road sidewalks, would be now that the state has authorized that we could have this, take the railroad and turn it into a trail between here and Augusta. And towns are starting to talk about what pieces and how they want to do it. The most valuable piece, I think, in Topsham would be to go from Elm Street to Tedford Road, because that's certainly a hazard for cars, bikes, pedestrians, where that trestle is that goes over Elm Street. So if we could take the trestle out, we could widen the road a little there, so it'd be safer you could get a full-size sidewalk, have it safer for bikes, and it would have a connection to get as far as Tedford Road, would be another way there too. So, so that's something again, it's not in the budget to any of that work right now, but that's something as we look for opportunities and try to position the town to maybe take advantage of a grant if the state DOT has one or something. Other things we're looking at is hazard mitigation. You know, our probably place most vulnerable to climate change, sea level rise or storms is Pleasant Point Road. We paid a couple years ago for a study to come up with ways to protect it. Some of the ways are what we call hard solutions that would be putting boulders in certain areas. Other ways are what they call nature-based. And that is some of the areas where it isn't as close to the road right now. They're saying if we plant the right things, the roots should protect the shoreline. So then you don't have to get to the point of paying all the money for the hard solutions. There's a state's coming out with a grant in March for nature-based solutions. And so we're talking to the engineering firm that did our initial design about giving us a final one for some of the areas, and hopefully we'll get some grant money to help with that. And then the area that I think could give us some maybe substantial revenue in the future. We haven't actually budgeted numbers yet, but it's this idea of extended producer responsibility. So a few years ago, the legislature basically passed a rule that the people generating waste should help pay for the recycling of it. And you probably notice your Amazon packages have gone from being box upon box to now sometimes even just paper bags or paper packaging. The reason why is because Amazon knows they're going to have to start paying for all that packaging for disposal soon. So what's happening right now is the state's collecting data for certain regions of the state, trying to figure out the average cost to recycle, say, cardboard from Topsham or something. And they've identified a certain number of recyclables. There are things that are called readily recyclable. Cardboard definitely is. One of the ones that's been debated is glass, because there really isn't a market for it. So they're not sure if how they're gonna handle that. But if Topsham recycles all the things on this list, they call readily recyclable, and Echo Maine that we contract with is committed to doing all the things on the list, then we can get reimbursed for some of our costs. So cardboard, we actually sell on our own, and we've carved out an exception from our contract with Echo Maine because we actually make some money on cardboard. But let's say the 8 types of plastic that we now take that we didn't always take. Those get sorted down at the Echo Maine facility in Portland and sold. And if it turns out that the revenue that comes into paying for it isn't enough, the producers are going to have to help pay the cost of those things, and we're going to get a check. Our check it won't cover all our costs. Here's why. Like if you go to some of the smaller towns, they've got big bins they put out, and you just put your stuff in, and sometimes people put a lot of trash as well as the recyclables. Our recycling is supervised, so we have staff that make sure people are they're not putting plastic containers in that still have food in them, for instance, or something like that. It means our recyclables are much better quality, but it also means it costs us more money because we're paying someone to supervise the recycling. But I think it's better for the planet, even if it's costing us a little more. But even if we start getting some of that revenue back, that'll be a plus. So we haven't budgeted to actually get EPR money back because we don't know how much it's going to be. But I think next year at this time, I'm going to be able to tell you we're starting to get some checks, and we'll have a better idea for future years. We did just get our first check from Echo Maine. One of the things when we switched to them, they said is that if we sell our recyclables and we get better than a certain amount of revenue from them, we share it with the people that give us the recyclables. And we just got a check the other day for, was about $500, Kathy, I think.
In that neighborhood.
Yeah, so, but we never get a check from Casella, so we're heading the right direction, I think, with that stuff. All right, Kathy, I'll let you do this page.
Right, most of our budget is wages. So that is the driver for the budget for the most part. We started with non-union positions, we started with a 4% COLA. And then now we are in the second year of our union contracts. We still have longevity the longevity is usually defined in the contract, but for non-union people, every 3 years, you get a longevity boost of 3%. The biggest increase we had this year, it looked to me like, it was health insurance. We had a 9% increase for the first 6 months. We have, obviously, we budget on a fiscal year basis, but health insurance is on a calendar year basis. So for 26, for half of our year, we already know what that costs, and that was 9% increase over 2025. And then for the second half, we budgeted 5% increase for the last 6 months, not really knowing what there's gonna happen. And we have the same problem. We do offer something called the buyback, where if you have an opportunity, like husband and wife, if you have an opportunity to get on somebody else's, we'll give you a cash amount of $9,300, which is significantly less than if we carried you as a single person. So surprisingly, people move back and forth. And you never know when you have empty positions, and it's hard to grasp. Well, what do you think they're gonna take? So we try to budget a mix of all instead of just like, no, everybody's gonna be married and we're gonna offer them yeah.
Is the 9,300 spread out over the year?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that if they came off and came back, that would get dropped.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They have to submit proof of insurance every January, so we know that they're really covered somewhere else. The dental insurance went up 5% this year. I don't think it's gone up for 2 or 3 years, so that's significant. One of the things that our town manager did was we went out on P&C, which is property and casualty, and then also workers' comp. All our health, workers' comp, P&C is all through Maine Municipal Association. And we went out to the outside world for P&C and workers' comp. And what ended up happening really was that we were getting a good deal, but we got an even better deal because we asked for one. So that was a 10% decrease that we got for this year. So we're like 2 years ahead now because we got back 10, and then I'm gonna budget 5, expecting a 5% increase for this year. That was property and casualty. On the workers' comp. Mark negotiated a 17% reduction. So that's, that was like $20,000. No, it was more than, no, it was about $20,000. And then instead of covering with the Maine family and medical leave, we went with a private company, and the result of that was that we didn't have to do anything last year for the family medical leave. And we'll start the insurance in July 1, and that is at a rate of 1.05 for the current year. So we haven't really seen. Yeah,
I just have a couple of questions. Did you want to wait? Are you almost done?
well, I'm done with this screen,
Okay.
so
The dental insurance, how much does the town pay and the employee pay?
85 is the
That's
town.
what I
and
thought.
15
That's the same way with the medical, right?
Yep.
Good.
Certain things like vision is 100% on the individual. Additional health insurance you can pick up for you on your own. The non-union employee, well, for the, you call it, income protection, which is sort of like the PFML. Even our carrier said that they would be thinking, depending on how the rollout goes of that insurance, that they might even consider dropping coverage for income protection. So for certain, the only group that isn't 85-15 is the police department.
Yeah.
They pay 100% of their own.
The other question under the 4% COLA, the longevity and the step increases. Did we negotiate a contract this year,
Last year,
last year? And
We're in
what
the
was that
second year, right?
percentage? Yeah, what was that percentage, Kathy? It
Or-
increased.
that's the fourth. Actually, I've got another slide. I'll talk more about in a second. So.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll talk, Wednesday night, we have a section on the insurance. I'll talk more about the process we did on the insurance.
Thank you.
It's Wednesday.
Kathy.
Okay. In your book, we don't spend a lot of time on the revenue part because a lot of that we can't so much control. The only time revenue is really get controlled is if the select board were just say the fees for the transfer station or something. Most of the revenues is Kathy's predictions when you see them in your book. But she's a pretty good predictor. So overall, we think that they're gonna go up 8%. Building has slowed, so we reduced the estimates for the things that Tom Lister gives permits for, the related building. On the positive side, EMS billing, we expect will continue to go up. And we're told that some of the federal reimbursement rates, the Medicare, Medicaid, are expected to go up. Solid waste, we have some increase in those fees. Some of that's just as volume increases. Some of it's also as if a cost goes up, we go to that relatively frequently, the select board to adjust it. I already talked about our first check for Maine, Echo Maine, and I've talked about the fact, while we didn't budget for it, we're hoping to get more revenue for our recyclables in 2027. All right, so this is to your question, Ruth. The select board's the select board that was here last year is familiar with a lot of this because it was part of the negotiation things. But our goal for the COLA is basically to keep up with the cost of living. When we go to negotiations, we do kind of two things at once. Part of the contract is we do like a market survey. In most important towns we compare ourselves with are Bath and Brunswick. But we're also looking at other towns of similar size, similar makeup. You know, it's not necessarily fair to compare Topsham to a York County town, because we all know it costs even more to live in York County than it does in Saginaw County. So we look for places with about the same number of, say, officers, when we're comparing the police department, same population and things. And then we look to see what their salaries are. And last year, ever since 2020, I'll be frank, police have had us over a barrel because people don't want to be police officers. At one point, we had 5 vacancies. And so not just us, but a lot of places were forced to do significant wage increases for police officers, which happened last year. So we've been doing wage adjustments at the beginning of the contract to make sure that we're in the ballpark where the towns were similar size to. And then we do a COLA for the life of the contract. So when we were negotiating this last year, ignore the 725 number because we didn't know that one yet. But we were looking at the cost of living for our part of the country had gone up 7.3% as of July 22, 2.6 the following year, 3.6 the following year. And then they have a separate inflation number that's everything except food and energy. And you see it wasn't as bad as 2022. It was more than the one including food and energy in 23, more in 24. And Topsham had given a COLA in 22 of 4%, in not given, it was negotiated, but and in 23 was 4%. The COLA in 24, as effective July of 24, was 3%. And so when you did the math, you saw Topsham was falling behind. So we negotiated a 4% COLA for each year of the contract. And you see the effect of that in 25. Topsham's COLA was a little more that year than inflation. And then on the far right is the cumulative now through 7 of 25. The all item inflation was up 16.7%, except food and energy was 15.6. if inflation stays relatively, in the 3% range, we should be caught up so that the COLA will have just been what the purpose was by, next year. So, so that's where we got the 4%, and that's what we negotiated. So the negotiations are contracts with the police officers, contracts with, I'll call them the line workers. It's not that we have linemen working on power, but the people that I say working the tax clerk office, people that are driving trucks at Public Works. And then we have a separate contract that's for certain supervisors. So the supervisors in that Sky and Justin are actually both covered by the supervisors union. So we have 3 of those. Every contract has the same COLA, it's 4%. We've done the same in this budget. Obviously, you can change it, but we proposed the same 4% for non-union workers. The theory behind that is, in our mind, if we didn't treat non-union workers the same as, or other town workers, so to speak, it's kind of an incentive, say, for at the fire department for them to form a union, because they're like, oh, the police got 4 and we didn't have a union, so we only got whatever. So we try to treat everyone the same, A, because it seems to make sense, and B, because it probably helps us not get more unions. Not that there's anything against unions, but it's certainly a lot easier to be flexible and make changes when you don't have to negotiate with a bunch of people. We had, a few years ago, we were having a horrible time getting truck drivers. And we kind of came up with a creative solution for people with CDL licenses. And I'll be frank, one of the reasons we can't get them is because when Maine legalized marijuana, a lot of people wanted to partake of marijuana, which you can't do if you have a commercial driver's license. So we decided to come up with what we call the CDL bonus. And at the time, it was an extra $2 an hour if you have your commercial driver's license. And so it's the $2 an hour is the sacrifice that it means you can't smoke marijuana even off duty because it stays in your system for 30 days. It would come up to your DOT physicals and things.
See, I don't get that though. Why pay them not to? Why just say they can't?
Because we wouldn't have the drivers.
It's still,
So this was a way to give them some extra money in their paycheck, which helped us hire people. So it got our vacancies filled, and in the union, we have a good relationship with. When we went to the union leaders and we said, would like to institute this new thing because we're having trouble hiring CDL drivers. And the union said, great, wonderful, you're trying to help some of our members. They talked, we'll sign on. The risk, though, is that when you do that with the union can say, oh, that's nice, you want to do that for them, but we want something done for everyone. So again, I'm not against unions, but to the extent, if we can not have them just by trying to treat people fairly, it's helps us to be able to address problems and be more flexible. So this is in graphical form, what I said a minute ago. Topsham's the green line on the far right, the bottom of the cumulative. But as you can see, we're in the ballpark, and I think we'll probably be about, unless we get really bad inflation this year, I think we should be caught up by next year at the end of the contract. This was, if you read my letter, and no offense if you didn't, but at the end of the book, in fact, if you want to take your book for a minute, and for my next discussion, I'm gonna highlight a couple of things I said in the letter. And you would go to page 6 of your book. As I mentioned, my goal is to try to shoot for a 4% increase in basically the net assessment. So the net that we're asking people to pay. This is a mixture of things we can control and some we can't. For instance, the top 2 lines are the county budget and the school budget. We basically just get a bill we have to pay. There's some chances for public input and we can go give that input, but we don't get to make the ultimate decision. I've assumed in these lines, and maybe it's a fairy tale, but I've assumed that both would try to also have a 5% increase. Last year we assumed them in at a 5% increase, and I think they were both around 8%. But yeah, I can't really control that too much. You'll notice on the next line, municipal, and you might say, well, how come Mark said he's shooting for a 4% increase, but the expenses on a whole only went up 3% in this budget? The reason why is because I'm expecting we're not gonna have as much surplus to use. We're not gonna be able, so we need to spend less, because if we don't have surplus, you have to raise taxes to make up the difference. So that's why this budget actually has a 3% increase in municipal expenses. Next two are things that we can't control at all. It's just what we pay for TIF and for.
May I ask a
Yep.
question on the surplus? I'm sorry, I keep asking this question. The surplus is money that you have left over at the end of the year that you haven't used. Is that what you're referencing, that we don't have that like we did?
Exactly.
We don't have 900,000 or 600,000 or,
I think Kathy and I think we'll have 1 million available, but we don't think we're gonna have the 1.7 we used last year. I actually have another slide. I'll come to that in a second.
oh, okay, I'm ahead of you, I'm sorry.
That's
But-
okay.
Is that kind of a misunderstanding to call it, yeah, I mean, cause I think of it more of a reserve that kind of like a cushion as for a rainy day fund. Am I off
Yeah,
that?
when you get to that slide, yeah, and then I'll give you more on that. So then the other things, we've predicted revenue sharing will be the same. I don't think the governor is probably gonna be too anxious, given the fact she's running for Senate, to all of a sudden go back on things that she said in the past. So I think we'll probably see the state keep it the 5% revenue sharing. The new numbers aren't out yet. They probably will be before we meet again. They usually come out in early February. But I'm hoping that number will be roughly the same as last year. So I predicted no growth, but I don't think it will be cut. We've also predicted that the homestead will stay about the same, which it usually does, and Justin can always talk more on that if you'd like when he comes up. Same thing for the business equipment reimbursement. We think that'll be about the same. Other revenue, Kathy thinks is gonna be up slightly. That's the 13%, and then the amount of surplus used would be less. So I'll spend a little bit more time on this now. So when we have money left over, like right now in our coffers, we have certain money that was given for particular purposes. We've got about $200,000 that was given years ago for capital things related to recreation. That fund just kind of sits there. We've got another fund that we've actually used some of, but will get repaid. That was about $10,000 that was given for the, I think, quote unquote, worthy poor, like 80 years ago or something. And those earn some interest and they can be used to support worthy poor. I don't know what worthy versus unworthy is, but we did temporarily use some of that from the select board this year to address an issue that we expect to get repaid. So we've got dedicated funds. Then we've got reserves that the select board set aside for particular purposes. For instance, we've got in the neighborhood of $600,000 that was set aside over a few years back when we were kind of awash in extra money that goes for capital replacements. So if, God forbid, the HVAC system dies tomorrow, we've got some money there. We don't have a special town meeting and have a special tax or something. There's money sitting there to fix it with. We also have, a couple years ago, we have a select board policy that says how much fund balance we're supposed to have aside for the rainy day, which is roughly 2 months of our expenses. We had more than that a couple years ago, and knowing that the Tedford Road project was coming in, it was gonna cost, at the time, Wright Pierce estimated 2 to 3 million. I'm hoping in the end we get it closer to the 2 than the 3. But we took 300,000, or the select board set 300,000 aside and put it in a special fund for Tedford Road. So after you have your money that's left over for the specific purposes, the money that was, say, given years ago for recreation, the money that's in reserves for capital, or then you end up with the leftover is called your surplus. Each year, if we have leftover money in the budget, sometimes we ask to have it rolled over. For instance, we had some money for consultant fees for the recode that weren't spent a couple years ago. We asked to have that go into the following year so that we wouldn't need to keep retaxing, thinking we'd have to pay more experts for that. If we don't ask to have the money rolled over, like for instance, if we had a couple of truck driver openings at Public Works, we had a deputy public works director last year, we tried to fill all year, we couldn't. Let's say we had 100,000 left in public works wages, that becomes surplus that just gets undesignated. So our new undesignated surplus gets added to our old undesignated surplus. And then between, was it 16.7 and 18% is the amount the select board can pick to set aside for the rainy day. And then anything above that can either get to use for the new budget, or again, could be put in a reserve fund of some sort. What happened last year is despite we actually reduced the town's budget by 2% last year. So the town spent 2% last year than the year before in our hope to try to get taxes in the 3 to 4% range. We predicted the county and the school would do 5%. When the county and school came back by 8%, it meant that our tax increase was going to be roughly 5.3% when it all worked together. And the select board, actually, I think it was with the extra money, it got to 5.3. It was going to be more than that. It was going to be roughly 6 neighborhood. But because of the money, the select board used most of the excess surplus for that, we got the tax rate down to the 5.3. So long way of saying a short thing. Let me show it. So this is what we used for surplus in the past 5 years. You'll notice, you might think, wow, what was the problem in fiscal year 23 that we used almost $3.5 million of surplus? That was the year that we paid off a couple of the bonds early. So the thought was, since surplus was kind of building up, let's get rid of the debt. So that paid the bonds that were callable in 2023. And then fiscal year 24 didn't need much. 25 used more to try to keep the tax rate down. 20, same thing for this year. But I think we're not going to have 1.7 million to use for this year. So that's why I've tried to keep expenses increasing at 3. And we think we can come up with about $1 million based on what Kathy's expecting at this point. Questions, comments? We have always on hand, the auditors always recommended 16.5 million or something like that. Are we still carrying that?
16%.
It's a percent.
It's a percent, okay, all right,
It's a percent of the budget for the following
okay.
year.
Thank you.
We've been talking to the county, because right now we pay all our county money in October. And if we could pay the county in 2 payments, we'd get a little more interest on our money. So all the towns have been talking to the counties. The problem is if everyone did it all in 2 payments, the county might have to borrow money and take out tax anticipation notes. And our goal is certainly not to make county take out money, or if there's interest to be made, would rather make an interest on Topsham's money. So we're kind of talking back and forth with the county and trying to find a way that meets everyone's needs so we can maybe get a little more interest that way.
And why do you anticipate 27 is not gonna be as much?
Because we just don't have it there. Because we've been wringing the budget out, so we don't have a bunch of vacant positions like we used to.
Okay,
Pretty much last year, the police department kind of saved the fire department. The fire department pretty much spends every dollar they've had and maybe a little bit more. But the police has had enough vacant positions that offsets it. Public Works has had some, but all of a sudden we're filling our truck driver positions, which is good. And we now have our deputy director position filled that we've tried for 2 years to fill. So we're paying the wages, so we don't expect to have a lot of openings.
thank you, Mom.
And then this is graphic, basically shows where your money goes. As far as, so the blue, which is most of the budget, is operating. The orange part is capital. And the green is debt service. So as we discussed maybe before the meeting, we make our last payment on a 2016 equipment bond in November, and then Topsham will have no debt.
Yay.
How many towns do you think can actually say that,
None.
except Topsham?
Maybe Bridgeton, I don't know if Bridgeton is.
I've never watched one that's actually.
I think that's a pretty big accomplishment that should be celebrated.
The prior board really tried, as this one has, really to get rid of debt and not accumulate anymore and try to go along. And we were against bonding, we wanted it paid out, and that's it, and have the money just flow in, so.
2023.
Dave was a big driver of that, and I was, and Bill.
I mean, the only thing I'll say, something I classes in public policy, is that some expenditures are so big, and the kind of the public fiscal theory is it should be the roughly the people that are using the building pay roughly the cost of it. So like if say we're gonna rebuild this building, but we had to start from scratch, we probably aren't gonna have the reserves to pay it from cash, and so it makes sense to bond something like that. On the other hand, it probably didn't make sense to bond trucks, you know, in 2015 and 16. It's just the town got in such financial issue, it couldn't, like, I know this happens with Bodenham right now, that they're bonding all kinds of stuff that we would never think of bonding, so. So I think bonds aren't necessarily horrible, but you wanna save them for the really big expenses, not too small stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, years ago, you know, we made a decision. You said to cut down the debt. And Derek followed through with that in 2023, but we're now full chunk of money paying down. That's why we were in this phenomenal financial position as far as debt is concerned. And always the discussion back then was to, if we need something in 5 years, we're gonna start putting money away for the next 5 years instead of bonding things.
Yep.
I certainly like to see that continue.
We're still doing that, like, we put so much for a truck. Get replacement every 15,
We'll do more of that Wednesday night,
okay,
but to be honest, to keep the tax rate at 4%. I can't put money aside for, say, the new ladder truck right now.
Right.
So you may tell me at the end of this, Mark, I don't think you're budgeting enough for capital. And if you tell me you want me to budget more, I'm happy to do it, you know, so tonight. We basically want to show you all the math and you can tell us what choices you want. It's your town, we work for you. Okay, so administration, that's on page 17 of your book. We'll start picking up pace a little bit on these things because some of them don't have a lot to discuss, but again, happy to answer questions. So it continues to just be the town manager, assistant town manager, and an administrative assistant. And on page 17, the administration is pretty much all, or not pretty much, it is, it's all just table. All the other thing on this page is the municipal officers, that's the select board. I put in for them the same 4% that everyone else would get, figuring it's, again, fair to treat all the town employees the same.
Your workers' comp, Mark, I assume that's come down because you've gotten beyond those 3-year period, look back period for.
No, this, Mark renegotiated that, and we went out to bid and we got some quotes, and then.
So it was just pretty much that, it's not because of your experiences
I don't
been
think-
dropped.
I can't say it was.
We actually have, it should get better next year, but we've got one case that was very expensive, should start come off our rating next year. I'll tell you the story now, it'll save you time Wednesday night. So the message we got from you folks last year was go try to shop your insurances, where appropriate. So one of the ones that we shopped was the workers' comp. And so there was a company called Brown and Brown that we chopped some stuff through. And they found a company that would give us a workers' comp quote, and our quote for Maine Municipal, our renewal one was, I think, around like 90,000 or something or other. And the one, we got a response of 50,000 from this other company. So it was like, this is gonna be too good to be true. So we showed the quote to Maine Municipal, and the guy there was really does look out for the best interests of the towns. And he says, yeah, that quote, you're gonna pay a lot more than that quote. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, they didn't do it legally. He said, they didn't take into account your experience rating. And he said, they did that with another town and they're not supposed to be. And he said, if you don't get it like a surprise 2 months into your thing, you're definitely gonna get it the next year. So we went back out to the company and we said, we're told maybe you didn't figure this right. And they're like, oh, whoops, yeah, it looks like we made a little mistake. And they changed our number, they increased it from like 20,000. But we kind of lost confidence in them at that point. We also know that we get phenomenal service from Maine Municipal. You actually have a real person to talk to, you're not caught in an 800 thing. We can talk to them before incidents, after incidents, they give the employees great service as well. And so Maine Municipal was mad because they've been losing towns to some of these other companies. And our rep went to his boss and he said, I really don't want Topsham to make the mistake of going with this company because I know they're gonna regret it. Is there anything we can do for them? And somehow, and I'm not quite exactly sure how, but they found a way to take about 20,000 off our premium. So we stayed with them. We still get a significant discount. They do have a number of programs that we take advantage of that should help us lower rates in the future. So I think we probably, unless we get a big injury, which we do our best to try to avoid, next year's, I think we probably can still do even better than the rate we got this year. But they do give us credit as the experience gets better and things. And then what happened on the property insurance is we went with the same company. They were shopping us to a company called Travelers, big company. And they said they were gonna give us a quote. And I was a little nervous about Travelers because I used to be president of a homeowners association of a condo that had Travelers, and we had horrible claims service from them. But turned out in the end, Travelers didn't even give us a quote. Maine Municipal had sharpened their pencil and they gave us a little better price than we were expecting to get. But again, they've got great service and things. They also have a number of programs that we can sign up for, and Jeff's working on trying to do some more safety programs that should help us get more savings in the future. So in the end, we stayed with Maine Municipal for their service, but we were able to get some better rates in insurance. So that's all for insurance for now. Any questions on the administration part? All right. The other part, although technically this isn't administration, it's because Jeff and I do the duties. We'll do this one now too. So page 21, this is economic development. So we used to have a person that was paid, a 40-hour salary, benefits, and everything else that was our economic development director. We proposed to continue to leave that position vacant. Derek and I, a couple of years ago, took that money, decided we needed it more as a deputy public works director, because we were hoping to get someone on before Dennis gave us his resignation to train with him. We finally get the person on and they'll get 3 months. We were hoping they would have had a couple of years, but we thought that was more important, so we shifted that money. So we do not have a person budgeted for this, but Jeff and I assume some of those duties. I'm a member of the Mid-Coast Council of Governments, which is something that our economic director used to do, of the board of directors. I take the minutes for the meetings of the TDI, which used to be done by the economic development director. I go to the business openings when they happen. And because of the fact that Jeff and I are doing that stuff, we're able to take a percentage of our salary, pay for it with TIF money, which is kind of sheltered. Because the economic development stuff, we have a number of TIFs that were left at allowable expense. So we're still able to save some of our TIF money. The big number in here is the 25,000. Same as last year. TDI has a fund that the town started giving them money years ago to build up kind of a war chest. The purpose of the war chest is if some type of an economic development thing comes up, there's money there ready to go for it. The classic example was when they were putting in the new water lines on Mountain Road up at the Highlands. There was an opportunity for about $50,000 to make a connection so that it could be ready to go down Can-Am to all the schools. And TDI spent the money, later the town reimbursed them for it, but it's there for that. Some of that war chest got used a couple of years ago to do a study of the Topsham Fair Mall Road, or actually a survey of the Topsham Fair Mall Road, because the first step to doing a good traffic plan for it was to figure out what you have there. So that was done. This past year, there was a water and sewer study trying to figure out what would be needed for water and sewer improvements. If say it was either developed on the far side of 95 or the Crooker property, or developed Parliament, Liberty, Congress, so more than is there now. They paid for that study. That study was about 75,000, came out of TDI's war chest. This gives them some of the money back towards it. The balance right now in that fund they have is about $350,000. They're gonna come to the select board. Actually, they already came, right? They're about to put out an RFP for engineering work to figure out what needs to be done in Can-Am. So that could have water and sewer in it, and have a resulting good enough quality public road that is done. There's really no way to develop, say, the Crooker property right now if we don't find a way to get sewerage from this part of town over to Tedford Road. There's three major ways sewerage leaves Topsham. The first is down Main Street. That one, if not full right now, it's close and will be full by the time the building at Union Park gets built, as well as the building that proposed for across the street here. And a lot of Topsham Fair Mall goes down Winter Street. They say that's pretty much full and it's the oldest part, so they'd rather not stress it too much, or Winter Street itself. So the last way to get sewerage out is Tedford Road, which was built by the owner of Highland Green. That's relatively new pipe, big capacity. There's a pumping station that's at the base of Can-Am Drive. If the flow of that station was reversed, it could take the sewerage, instead of sending it from Main Street, send it high pressure up Can-Am. So the sewer, we could benefit economic development if there was a high pressure sewer line going up Can-Am. There is still remnants of the Navy water system out at the base, which is far substandard. The MRRA has actually a water utility, both in Brunswick and Topsham. They'd love not to be, but the Brunswick Topsham Water District doesn't want to take it over till it's fixed. And they need more pressure in that area. The schools have issues with the water pressure. Mike's nodding, like he's aware. So there's interest in the water district in getting a high pressure line in there. The owners of the property at Liberty Circle and up the hill would love not to be responsible for the road anymore. And so there's about 5 or 6 different entities that all would have an interest. So there may be some way to carve the pie up and get a bunch of people to pay in to get that fixed. That alone might be enough to do significant development at the Crooker parcel without having to do all these other improvements that are being talked about. But the first step is figuring out what the problem is. That TDI is putting out an RFP for that study. And then once we get numbers in and figure out how much it costs, we can try to figure out how to split the pie up. So that's the type of things that get done with that $25,000. Any questions on this so far? So, in my other part of that letter, if you had read it, is my goal again was to try to keep things at 4%. So there's some things that may well be worthy projects, but I didn't put them into my budget because when I was trying to make priorities, I didn't think they were as important as some other stuff. So there's 4 items that you're going to hear over the next 3 days. I call it a la carte items that are things that are not built into the budget, but if you tell me that you want them in, we can do that. The first one is TDI would like us to, they'd love to have their executive director back. They want the full-time job to do economic development in Topsham. I think Jeff and I do probably 70% of that job. One of the things I can't do, as well as a full-time person would, is know all the possible loan programs. Like for instance, when Wicked Joe's expanded out at the base with their plant and things, they got some economic development loans and grants from the state. They were actually managed by Mid-Coast Council of Governments rather than the person that was our in-house employee. But there may be some merit to having some time without having to have a full-time position. Mid-Coast Council of Governments might be interested in basically giving some contract work. Where they're doing further up the coast is like in the town of Warren, they didn't want to have a full-time planner. So they contracted Mid-Coast Council of Government for planning services. So rather than have a town employee, they get 20 hours a week of Mid-Coast Council of Government, whatever they contract for. So this would be basically, TDI would like to have some contract economic development. I've asked them, and I don't have the answer yet, what it is that they want they're not getting from the town right now. So kind of, we'll put this one on the back burner for right now. They may come to you with your next joint meeting to make their request more explicit once they get a chance to define what exactly they're looking for. They're having a strategic planning retreat on the 17th, and I expect after that they'll have a better idea. One thing is that if you folks wanted to have that in the budget, it would be a TIF eligible expense. So in effect, it really probably wouldn't be, the effect wouldn't be like 20,000, might be more like 14,000 or something. Any questions on that?
Can we have this, I'm talking discussion like this last year? Someone wanted us to join.
Last year, they wanted to sponsor the Chamber of Commerce. Is that?
Yeah, and we figured, well, we're gonna pay all this money, but they can't guarantee we're gonna get anything for the money, or something along.
Yeah, this is different than that. So
Okay, yeah.
that was in essence a request for a nonprofit wanting money, which we've treated basically as a no across the board. This would be buying specific services and that, but we'll come back to you, or they'll come back to you with one of your joint meetings and say what services they want.
The Mid-Coast Council of Government has before the years, so
Oh, I think
there's
it's.
a lot of things that's cooperative with the towns, that's been very beneficial.
And if, for instance, if you decide you want whatever the services that TDI is asking for, I think it's a much more effective way of getting it by just buying a piece of someone as opposed to adding 130,000 to the budget for
Yeah.
employees with benefits. All right, page 24, contractual services. So this is the top 5 lines or so. One place I think we can save some money is I mentioned earlier that we've been carrying over money to pay for the recode consultants from prior years because we haven't spent it all. So we've got right now over 100,000 of consultant money sitting that was carried over. So I don't think we need to add 50,000 to it in the next budget. I've cut it down to 10. The reason why I have it at 10 is because I don't want to cut it out completely because it's something that you definitely need experts at different points over the years. And also if we find right now, all our money that's sitting in there is it's called sheltered money from some of our tax increment financing districts. So if it's consultants that I can relate to economic development, for example, then I can use that money, which I think the recode certainly relates to economic development. On the other hand, if it was a consultant for, well, you'll hear a request tonight for a consultant for a natural areas plan, that could not use our current consultant money because it's not economic development. So this 10 right now, we'd decide later in the summer if we're going to shelter it or not based on what we think we might use it for. If for some reason we thought we had a need for consultants that weren't going to be economic development related, then maybe we would shelter this money. Legal, I've cut a little bit. We had beefed that up a couple of years ago because there were threats of lawsuits involving some rezoning of some property. The rezoning didn't happen, and I think we can safely cut back on that a little. The other thing we've been doing a pretty good job of is we've been getting, when someone asks for a TIF, the select board's been asking the person to agree to pay for our legal expenses to put the TIF together. And so when the Hackham attack, the Tedford Road housing TIF was done, the town's legal fees all got reimbursed on that. They were about 15,000 or so. And we just got our first reimbursement check back for the TIF for 4 Union Park. I think it was like 14,000. So that helps us keep our legal expenses down by getting things like that reimbursed. You might say, well, maybe even 35,000 is too much, but 35,000 goes quick if we have a dispute. All you need is one employee that decides they're going to take something to the Maine Human Rights Commission or something like that. And even if we win, you quickly blow $10,000 or $15,000 in representation fees. And this is something that if we don't spend it, it doesn't roll over. It just goes into the surplus and helps pay for the next year's budget. So I'm cutting it a little, but I don't really want to cut it a lot. And then the only other line that's changed much is, while it's a big percentage, it's a small dollar amount. Safety HR is money that we use before we hire someone. We send them for a pre-employment physical to make sure that they can do the job and we don't all of a sudden own someone else's workers' comp injury or something. Other than that, the Humane Society contract always goes up. And you might ask, I thought you just said a minute ago, we don't give money to nonprofits. Why are we giving money to the Humane Society? The state of Maine has a law that requires us to have a contract with someone to take our animals. And even if our police department doesn't pick them up, if someone from Topsham finds a stray animal, we have to have a place to send them. So for for the fee we pay the Humane Society, they basically have to accept any animals from Topsom. I used to have the police chief in Brunswick used to be mad because we'd come out of the police budget in Brunswick and it'd see this big number. He's like, and he'd see we were sending less dogs once the base closed, because sometimes people would abandon the dogs when they left the area. And he's like, I could pay for a room at the Comfort Inn for the amount I'm paying for these dogs. We get per capita basis. But we don't really have, they figure our contract based on population of the town, which is kind of odd. You think it would be tied to the animals, but it isn't. They kind of have us over, they're like the police department, they have us over the barrel. We have to pay whatever they ask. So that's where that one comes from. Any questions about contractual services?
I think Humane Society has done a good job though,
Mhm.
over the years. I know when I was here as an employee, that there was a lot of talk about us having our own kennels out to the landfill.
Oh, God.
And that didn't work. So, and I won't go into details.
Yeah, no, we probably won't start that. I did read that some town that has like a barn, that's a town
Yeah.
barn that they try to take care of the animals, and Amanda might agree to feed them each morning for us or something. All right, central services. Derek created this, I don't know how many years ago, but the idea is that a lot of like say postage is just one place rather than every department having their own postage budget. So this is that one place. The places that the hardest part of it to control is probably the lease and license line. This is the big one that pays for a lot of our computer software. Not probably 10 years ago, computer companies realized that they don't like you buying the program and then using it forever. They want annual fees. So almost every program we have is annual fees. They all seem to have ways of going up. So that pays for the software that basically runs the town and many of its departments. The codification one is money that would pay to print the recode. If the recode goes through, it's a big change to a lot of pages. So if you go online, you see we have an electronic Town of Topsham code. This increases to pay for that if the recode goes through. If it doesn't go through, we roll over to another year. The one number I'm kind of ashamed of is the phone internet number. Back just before Derek left, Fairpoint, for the Consolidated Communications, the old Ma Bell, whatever. They gave us a deal that was really sweet, and it looked like we were going to be doing much better with them than we were doing with Comcast on some of our stuff. And we had a company up in Winthrop that they were Central Maine Communications they were working with that had our phone system, but our phone system was almost dead. So we decided to sign on with Fairpoint for everything. And as Jeff can attest, because he's the one that spends hours on 800 numbers, none of it's what they promised. We also, they said this, they claimed they looked at all our systems before they switched. And then when they got here, they're like, oh, whoops, we didn't realize that. We had internet coming into one place in town. We had the police department was getting its internet from Saginaw County because of some security stuff. Saginaw County was sick of providing our internet. Saginaw counties had to get their person involved, their engineers. We had to get ION involved to an extent that was more than thought. So we had all kinds of bills in conjunction with a changeover that made it not the deal it was supposed to have been. We had to keep the Comcast internet on for a lot longer than expected because we needed the other to be fully functioned before we switched. We're still having issues with phone numbers disappear. And then Jeff calls up and find they were reassigned by Fairpoint without our permission to other businesses. The other day, Jeff discovered that the number you're supposed to call the Tedford shelter was rerouted to a former police officer's line, and it had 100 messages on them and sitting there for 2 months because the police officer didn't work for us anymore. There were people trying to get hold of the Tedford shelter.
Do you have any recourse against them for this, or?
We're trying.
We've been had, the guy that's the salesman comes out of Manchester, and I think he's trying. It's just a big bureaucracy. So he has trouble getting results. So we're still working on them. And I'm hopeful we aren't actually going to spend the 27.5 here because we have now cut the Comcast connections. But when Kathy budgeted this, she did it kind of based on prior experience. So I'm hopeful we're not going to spend that full number, but that's why this number is significantly more than we'd like it to be.
plans to change that at all in the future, or are you stuck forever?
I'm almost scared. Cause I mean, if we finally, we're close to getting this working, so if we get it working and stabilized. I almost think the worst thing we could do is switch companies again, because then this involves everything from. Microphones at the fire department that when you press the door and you say that they go somewhere. To all our internet that supports our emergency operations, to our phones, to, it's like every aspect of communications in the town. And I think it's a lot more complex than Fairpoint apparently thought it was gonna be. And of course, the day they came to install it, they supposedly were sending a tech, and the tech was being assisted by a truck driver. The tech was a subcontractor because they were trying to save money or something. And it was a horror show.
What about the fiber company?
Yeah, that's what I was.
I think it would be worse.
Consolidated.
Because they're even less sophisticated, there was one of the fiber companies had someone with a ladder and a minivan the other day in the course working on one of the poles. So, I mean, this is using Fairpoint's fiber and stuff, but it's just, you need the technical expertise, and it's, and we had to use more of ours than we expected that we were gonna have to.
That technical expertise is the hard thing to come by nowadays.
Fiber optic, that's used a lot though, like feeding and consolidated. Topsham is, a lot of people are using it.
Right. No, and hopefully now that all the bugs have worked out, we're okay, but every time you change it, we've got like the programs at the police department, they all have interfaces and they all have programming, and
Yeah.
so I think we've got it worked out, and hopefully these costs will get better under control, and certainly when the contract comes up, we can look at it again, but I think we're probably better off trying to squeeze. I know he feels bad and he's supposedly gonna be giving us some money back for some of this. I think we're better off maybe leaning on him as opposed to starting fresh.
So is Ion still involved with managing our network?
Yep,
Yes.
and Ian does a great job. They have a network engineer that, again, he didn't know anything about this, he didn't think he had to be brought in, but he had to kind of bail them out, but then we have to pay his bill, so that was part of those expenses.
So it seems in this day and age that there's such a convoluted mess.
It is.
But it's getting less convoluted. All right. We already talked, the only other thing I haven't talked about here is postage rates went up, plus we're seeing more and more absentee ballots. Maine expects to see more this year because of the fact it's a gubernatorial election, so we increased postage for that reason too. All right. Kathy.
So for the first time since I've been here, I think that we have all our positions in the front office full. I told Eddie didn't have to come tonight, but he could probably do it. So we have Ed, who is the tax manager, and then we have a full-time tax assistant tax collector and an assistant town clerk. And that's Suzanne, and then today we just started a new employee for the part-time, which is 25 hours a week. So this will be the first tax billing. Because we're starting on that, that'll, pick up hopefully soon. This will be the first time in a while that we've had a full staff. So, very excited about that.
Should I wait till that comes up, because I got some questions on that, but.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, what I looked at the pages and I see revenues are down, like excise tax in the tax office, so that means, I thought it was projected to be less next year, that's what I thought I saw.
That's not what we've been seeing, is that it's
Okay.
gonna be less.
Okay.
So,
So my next question is it pretty stable on people that are registering vehicles, dogs, inland fishery and boats on the web versus coming in and doing it here? Do you have those figures that we could look at to see how that's increased, stabilized, or decreased?
Well, I mean, people can I can get them to you, because even myself, I register my car online, I don't come in for it. Doggies, what do you think about the volume of dog licenses? I'm
Most
looking
of
at,
them are doing because the new software Pet Point is a little bit more difficult for them to do at home. So we see a lot more coming in this year.
and as far as IF&W, I don't see a change. Amanda can probably talk about the other fees. Well, most of those you don't do online, vitals or anything, you don't do online anyway. But I can get you who's doing what on,
It's just interesting, we have these tools now,
right?
and if people are using them, then I just go back to less people. But I don't think we're there yet.
Is there an increase in dog registrations because of the, put your dog's picture on the sign if you register? Has that increased since? No impact, just more work for Jeff.
Not even a little bit?
Thank you, Kathy.
Probably better compliance.
Sure.
Well, I'll get you the rapid response numbers,
Thank
rapid renewal, and see how that is trending.
Does the online registration or and fees and stuff really save the town all that much, or is it just?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It does, we have to upload and download files,
Right,
and we have to record it, because they just plop it in our account, so we have to. Do journals to get it reported.
At one point, Derek had talked about trying to take the part-time position that was in there and turn it into full. But the part-time positions in there, you could almost work at McDonald's and make more money. So what we did in the last union contract is we raised the wage of those. But I don't really think, from what I see, I don't think we need to turn the part-time into full. I think the other thing that Amanda's done, which I think is a big plus, is when she said, when I'm clerk, can I have my office next to the office there? Because I want to be able to, if it gets busy, help out, have better, plus it's better management to be able to actually be the other people you're supervising and stuff. So we gladly let her do it, and I think that helps too. So I don't think we really need to add anyone new there or turn that,
Yep.
increase it. But the nice thing about that position is it's still a relatively thin staff. You know, a lot of times there's basically 2 people to respond to everyone. And if you got rid of, say, the part-time position, now if someone's on vacation or someone's all sick or we have a vacancy, it's hard to get business done. So I think we're probably about as low as we can go, but I don't see any need to add positions there.
Yep.
And Amanda can take a different position when she comes up if she'd like.
One thing that we added this year was a higher presence for paying the emergency medical services, and they can pay them online now. And we've seen quite a uptick in people actually doing that, so that's been helpful.
So that is helpful, very helpful.
I think it's leading to lower balances on the receivable end, so making me happy.
Thank you.
We got another page, Kathy, with your revenues.
And yeah, this was just a comparison of what we're seeing in that, especially the excise tax, the total is a little bit. If you're relying on like if you get money for local roads and your cable finance, which is going, cable franchise fees, which is going down the toilet. So the big revenue raiser here is excise tax. And as you can see, it's pretty 21, 22, 23, and it's since 24, it's just been going up, and Ed said it's still trending 8% over last year.
So just a comment too, everybody, a lot of people talk about developing Crookus and Crooker moving if they moved out of town. The excise tax alone on Crookus is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And even the agent fees, it's $5 or $6 every one of those trucks and trailers and all that. So I think when we do that, we have to think of something to replace it, because even when I was here, it was like $60,000.
I've been trying to buddy up with CMP because they've got that parcel on the other side of 201.
Oh, okay.
And seems
Yeah.
like a lot of towns aren't friendly with them. But they've done wonderful things for us, and we try to help them out when we can. So it'd be nice to get their, at one point they were talking about trying to move their service center from Brunswick to here, which would be nice. So
They were thinking about going to the place in Dresden or somewhere along there, Pittsfield or one of
Yeah.
them, I know. And because
So we keep working to try to.
Okay.
CMP.
We need to keep them.
So the only other thing that we, let's see. that We do in our budget is basically the things that relate to liens. Where did that go? Yeah. Perfect. It's just the lien cost, that's the only thing that we actually line item. 18.
Page 18.
Yeah, that's the only other thing that we line item, and that is to, send the liens out and then to discharge them at the. Yeah,
Rich.
thank you. Yep, that's about it.
Good job, council.
Thank you.
Justin's.
Email, Justin SE, Town Assessor. Like administration, pretty much the budget was 8 staff. There's still currently a staff of 1. Essentially, the only thing I'm changing on the request this year is, I'll speak up, sorry.
You do have a megaphone upstairs.
So. On the staff of 1, we have essentially the only thing I'm changing on my request this year is your request for part-time help. Good season weather for essentially 2 visit properties of what's out there. The gentleman's been doing it for me for the last few years. He's got a lot of other side projects going on, it seems, and I didn't get very many hours from him this year. What's referred to as quarterly visits, the state recommends that you see a quarter of properties every year. At this point, we're approaching, that'd be roughly 1,200 properties a year to see. But I'm normally doing on day-to-day things, I don't have enough time for me to be out seeing 1,200 properties. I visit all things that are building permit related, so anything that's a change that we know is going to be a change to the record card, I visit those. Don't use my seasonal staff for that. That's between 200 and 300 visits a year. That leaves 700, 900 visits a year that are probably just things that the visiting and, well, okay, they removed a barn. Great, cross it off the guard, take a new picture. So in discussions and prepping the budget with Mark, we suggest that maybe we want to bump that up a little this year and maybe try to put out an actual advertisement for somebody on a less flexible basis and a more regimented basis of, hey, you're here every Friday. So who we might get for that, not really sure yet, but that's why this is being bumped up.
And so if we're able to catch up on some of those that were falling behind, how does that affect revenue?
So essentially with this, it's not that it really affects revenue, although it could increase the value on a property, it might decrease the value on a property. I mean, Lionel, the gentleman who was doing it a couple years ago, he found people, they torn a barn down, a pretty significant one, and they never notified the office it was gone. So for 5 or 6 years, they were paying a couple $100 a year in tax on something that no longer existed. So it goes both ways. It both helps our residents as well as also potentially increasing what we have for our tax base. So it goes both ways. One of the ways that helps us long-term is I do a lot of adjustments to our valuations in-house rather than contracting out to a third-party firm. If we can see properties so that I know that when I'm making adjustments statistically, that I have a database that I'm working off of rather than what's in there really true or not. We can lengthen how long we have to go before we have to do a contract with a third party, which can be very, very expensive. So it's maintenance. It's really a maintenance thing. I don't have trucks to maintain, but I do need to maintain our records.
Another question is this something that interns can be used, or do they ever get used, or is this?
We haven't had, so far we haven't had interns that decided that this was something that they wanted to do. Think about it from this way, you're cold calling, right? You're rolling up on somebody's house simply based on the fact that no one's been there for 5 years to see their property or 6 years, and you're knocking on the door. In today's political climate, that's not always a friendly response. So we've kind of not pushed to have our interns do that. We really want them to have a good experience in municipal government, other than the first time around being someone in their face hot under the collar and wanting them to go away. So, and there's also, you want some kind of experience, at least in like what really contributes to market value on a property, right? You want the person that we're going to have doing this have some kind of background that deals with real estate. Whether it's an appraiser or a broker or an assessor. I know some other towns have gone to 4-day work schedules. So there may be some other assessing staff in the area that have their Fridays free that might want to pick up a little extra income, that they're already familiar with the process. So that's what we might do this for.
Sometimes the select board does the assessing.
Small ones.
Yeah,
Are there still towns that do that?
as a resident of one of those towns that dip their toes in those waters,
Right.
you don't want to tread there.
Right.
Sharks in the water.
I would have thought.
What's the goal
I think you agree, man.
annually for you? Is it to, do you break the town down into fractions, like we're gonna do a third of the town this year, a third of the town next year, and on a 3-year repeat?
For the visits,
Yes,
yeah, so for visitations, ideally, we'd be looking at about 1,200 a year. It gets a little fragmented because I'm going to focus on anything that has a building permit, right?
Right.
Which means that in any given neighborhood, there's little pockets of things that have definitely been seen in the last year. Whereas all of the neighboring homes in that street might not have been seen for 5 years. So I try to, basically, I have an attribute in my database that shows the last time a staff member has visited there. I pull those, when a gentleman was doing this, I pulled it based on last year of visit by calendar year. And I prioritize the things that have been the longest without being seen. And then I tried to group those in areas so that the staff member isn't like, well, let's go all the way to River Road and then let's bounce all the way over to Meadow Road. And
makes sense.
so I try to cluster things so it's more efficient to be in a neighborhood doing 30 homes rather than 2 here, 2 there, 2 there. So mostly it's driven by how long, but I will put some weight on
How
when I
long,
group things.
how long do you typically see as some of the older ones that haven't been viewed?
Some of them have been seen in 10 years.
Okay.
There's actually a few pockets out there because they're isolated, or the gentleman I gave these to, he didn't necessarily find the property. We have a few that are more than 10 years, and I'd really like to focus on cleaning those up.
No, I'm
Are you
curious
good with
because
the tape measure, Rand?
what I guess the ultimate thought process I'm going through is there going to be a time where we need to have somebody come in and reassess the town in its entirety?
Yes, absolutely. Even if we do this, there will be a time that we will need to do that, because we will need, for one thing, we want to have a third party look at it.
Yes.
You get inherent bias after a while. You get a third party come in and review everything. There is some differentiation in land valuations in different areas of town. We're not quite as bad as you might see like in a coastal community where like the value of waterfront is way up here and interior lots down here. We're more homogeneous than that, but we're not completely homogeneous. So there's absolutely reason to have a third party contract at some point, and we've kind of discussed that, and we talked maybe to some of our contractors, and we'll come back to that in the future.
Is there a lot of property that's landlocked?
Landlocked,
Yeah, there are no roads to get to them, how do you?
we have a couple.
And those are just based on,
At this point, most of those are also happen to be vacant parcel. They're not developed. So the ones that are landlocked that we really have no way to get to. They look like they're probably still land-based. I'll go in the GIS system and we can see the aerial overlays on them, and something small could still be under the tree canopy, but something significant, you're probably gonna see they've done it. Most parts we can at least get to with a street view. We have very few we can't get to where you at least kind of see a street. There's a couple, not many though. Question before I move on?
One last one, sorry.
Of course.
The cost of a town, a full town assessment.
To have a third party come in.
Yeah,
or-
oh, what's a ballpark for something like that?
So back in 2007, the contract was a little shy of $400,000.
Okay.
We've been maintaining the records. So in 2007, a huge part of the cost was we had them going out and essentially remeasuring everything. 100%, Yes, it's still a ranch, remeasure it completely. What we would probably do in the next go around is only have them go by and look for differences and changes from what's showing on the record card, like verifying outbuilding counts, or, okay, I see in the sketch, it looks like there's a deck off the side that's not on the property record card, so they measured that. We wouldn't be asking them the next time around to probably do 100% measure. We'd be asking them to go out and review for changes. So there'd be less field work involved, there'd be less staff time, which hopefully would significantly reduce it. Our current vendor that provides our software is also a company that does those services. Periodically, we reached out to them for a kind of a ballpark, and the last one we got from them was around $250,000.
And that's, I mean, so the last one we did was about 20 years ago.
That is correct.
And what? Considering that it's gonna be a significant cost, I'm just curious, when would you think that the next one would be necessary?
So it's partly driven by, the state audits us every year on evaluations, and it's partly driven on how far you are with, if I can maintain our values at close to market value, the state essentially looks for a differential between where we're at in our assessments versus actual selling prices. They try to look at what's our statistical difference, and part of that analysis is a quality rating. So it's essentially dispersion on a bell curve.
Right.
If you get too far outside of it, the quality rating is too bad, that's when the state really starts recommending you go towards that.
Okay, so there's no definitive time, as long as we continue to do, like Mark said, you can't retire.
I would like to eventually, but not this fiscal year. So yes, there's, but even if we don't get to that point, there are reasons to do it, because even if. Think of it this way, when they're auditing us, they're auditing on the sales that have happened, which might be 200 or 300 sales a year out of, we're approaching 5,000 parcels at this point. So you're looking at a very small subset that you're basing it on. And frankly, we are so far behind on just reviewing the stuff on some of these. At some point, we're going to want to do a flat reset that everything has been seen within a relatively narrow time.
Okay. There's something to put out for those future years of when we gotta make cuts in one thing to pay for something else.
We won't have to. We've actually been putting money away, capital.
So,
Right.
Or is that something TD and I can do?
So we have actually been, we haven't always put money into it each year for that on capital, but we have been putting a little aside every year. So we've basically been trying to build a reserve to pay for that project when we eventually need to do it. So hopefully it's nothing that would be big enough that we would need to bond, and we might even actually have enough in the capital account to pay for it.
Sure.
I'm just trying to look it up, see what it was.
It's the one time a year that we get to deep dive into this stuff, so I
Understand?
appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions.
Of course.
It looks like you've got,
I wanted to say off the top of the head, you were saying there's a balance of around 200, Kathy, or 220,
Yeah, I think
something
it
around that
was, I
ballpark.
just have to find that. I write it down every year and then I.
You mean you memorize that 600 spreadsheets that saved by number?
It's 223 with including this current year's contribution, so there's 223. And I think we have another
Almost 20.
another 25.
Which would bring us to, so if that was filled on that line, that would bring us to about 250, which is kind of in the ballpark of what they were talking about.
Great.
So we're in good shape.
but would you continue to contribute to that, assuming that the cost of that would be going up year after year?
I would assume that, I mean, these companies have labor costs as well, so their
Yeah.
labor costs are going
Right.
up. So yes, I would prefer that we keep contributing towards it, but I mean, at some point, you know, if we're 10 years old, we hadn't done it yet, but I think we will need to do it sooner than that. So I suspect we will be depleting that balance at some point in the next couple of years.
And do you ask every year as, to give you a basis for what you should be aiming at? or-
I've been asking them every couple of years. I have not asked them every single year. The last two quotes over the last 4 years have been within, I want to say 20,000 of each other.
And they told you it's about a 2-year wait list, right?
Yeah, so it'd be, that's the other thing is the lead time, because these are, you know, there's a very finite number of companies in New England that will do the work for a community our size. There's not that many contractors that would have the capacity to take on a project for us. So they have lead times. You know, as part of what's driving it is market shift, and as probably seen if you're paying, you know, if you've been watching the market at all, that has shifted significantly in the last four years. Which means there's an awful lot of activity in municipalities doing town-wide revaluation projects.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Seeing none, I'll move forward one more slide. This is just history. This is basically just showing the trend and what our taxable valuation is. Essentially, your tax rate is whatever budget is, whatever amount that needs to be raised from taxation combined of municipal, county, and school, divided by the taxable value of town, and that's how you arrive to a rate per 1,000. So we've been trending up. You can see it was pretty steep over the last few years. You will note that on the current fiscal year, I didn't make huge adjustments. The market is, at least in Topsham, hasn't seem to turn around completely yet, but it has certainly slowed. We went from 10 to 12% increases per year in selling prices to 3, maybe 4% last year. We may be finally plateauing after a very significant amount of time. So there might. That's another thing to consider for what might trigger us wanting to do a third party is if the market turned around and went the other way. Or if we might get into a where everybody's upside down and nothing is selling, so I don't have anything to base my adjustments on. This one's just informational, if there's no questions on that.
I just have a comment, Jeff.
Sure.
Ben, for years I've worked with you and for years you've done these presentations and I have this town should have absolutely complete confidence in you and what you do, because you do a fantastic job. So saying that, I think 70 is a good year to, when you're 70, to work your time.
I could.
No, I am very sincere. We've been so lucky. We didn't have him for about a year and some of it was a disaster, let me tell you. So,
The residents of Topsham have been very good to me as well.
yeah, well, you've been good to them, Justin.
You're not gonna run to where the grass is supposedly greener again.
I might have learned that lesson, but.
He's learned to water his own lawn.
This slide kind of falls on with the last one. If you superimpose the two, as you saw valuations trend up, tax rates went down. That doesn't mean people's tax bills were reduced. It just means you needed a lower rate per thousand because it was
Right.
more 1,000 per home. So you can see that we peaked in 2019 at 1915 per thousand rate, and we're currently at 1280. So we did go up a little bit last year. No questions on that one. And then the last one is just summary stuff. A lot of this is basically talking about what I already answered, how to reval and what might trigger it. And so we've touched on most of this essentially already. Questions I can help with? Anything not in my budget that you're absolutely want to know about the assessment field? Okay, thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you for speaking up.
Guess who's next? Clerk Amanda Campbell.
So I am the clerk, Amanda Campbell. I have a deputy, clerk, William Prout. We have about 30 election workers. And we do have volunteers, some are paid and some are not. Last year's highlights, we had two elections, town meeting, school budget meeting. Basically that. All right, so, this is how many voters there were, for last few years, presidential, last 2024, we had for, 2,961. Those are just the numbers that we have. So we did go up a little bit on the payroll this year, just because the minimum wage will be going up to 15.10, and we had 2 elections. The November election is gonna be a bigger election, so we're gonna have to have more election workers. Advertising is about the same. Professional services, coding of the sticks for the machines, those have not changed, so that has not increased yet. Document management is $1,000. We do shredding on site, so we have a bucket that we have that gets shredded every month instead of doing one big one a year. Voting machines, there's 2 of them that we still rent. We own 4 of them. That cost hasn't gone up yet. Supplies is the same. Last year it was $1,000, so we're gonna keep it the same this year. That will be helping pay for election workers to help us with early processing, We do supply lunch for early processing. On election day, we do pay for lunches. And then the printing of the ballots, 5,000. The ballots, depends on how many ballots we have for the election.
No. Yep, printing is for local ballots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So this year we had a surprise with 2 ballots.
Right.
So, yes.
Might have.
So. Any more questions?
I was gonna ask you, I was a senior retired clerk, some of us was invited to the New England Clerks Conference in Bangor,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a lot of new equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Are you versed on any of that? Are we looking at anything like that? And some of it is, a couple of them I thought was super efficient. So, but at some point you might be, cause I know
Yeah.
you knew, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not new, you're very versed on this, but,
Yeah. Well, some of the state stuff, that will be like equipment from the state, they
Right.
will issue that to us.
right,
But there's, yeah. Waiting on all that stuff.
thank you.
Anything else?
Good job, you first time.
Yeah. And general assistance. So pretty much the budget is gonna be the same from last year. We didn't, change anything.
Is general assistance a requirement from the state?
Yes. Yeah.
And are these partially or fully refunded to us from the state?
Yes, 70% of it is, refunded from the state.
As long as we do it right, following the rules.
Got it. And those that qualify for this,
State.
is it a salary or an income rather?
Based on their income, they have to fill out an application. And it's either they're eligible or not eligible.
Got it.
And if they're repeats, then we do have, they have to do some things instead of like jobs, they have to have a job requirements that we do have.
Are these, do they get these like a monthly basis for a period of time, or is it a one-time?
So they can, that it's 30 days. If they do need it, if they don't, if they need it for one time, that's fine. But if they need every 30 days, they can come in every 30 days and request.
Perfect, until the funds are depleted, basically.
Yeah.
Now, although we budget this amount for this year, does that mean if we didn't budget for this and more people came in, we wouldn't spend it, or we would if? I don't think this is gonna happen, but let's say an influx of people come in needing general assistance. Are we gonna give it to all that qualify and knowing that the state will reimburse up to 70% of it?
Yes, we have, yeah.
Okay,
The way the budget gets approved at town meeting, this is part of general government,
Mhm.
so hopefully we wouldn't have so many that we couldn't find enough savings in another department or offset it, so.
I think there's enough, I think there's a state of law that says,
Yeah.
It's been, okay.
Yeah.
and this only applies to people that live in the town of Topsham?
Yes.
Currently or living?
They have to either live or they are currently looking for a place in Topsham. But there are requirements for them to be eligible too,
Got it,
so,
thank you.
yeah. Any other questions?
I just got a quick question on the answer. So like, as far as funding general with PA, you know, like, where's the money for all the, returnables that it deals with?
That goes as revenue to the transfer station.
Wherever the transfer station, because like, you know, something like that, because people are coming, I mean, you always take it back and get your nickel back from Hannaford or whatever, but you're essentially donating it to the town with yourself. It would seem to me to make sense as, you know, you take that one and you put it into this fund. You as a town are helping your fellow residents of town in a small, not in a state way.
there's also a
I-
general assistance fund. And there's also a
Heating assistance fund
Right,
that some businesses do, donate.
right.
Like Highbrow, they'll donate once a year, a couple $1,000s to that program.
And individuals have donated to that program too.
They have,
Yeah.
yep, and we've also had people donate fuel gift cards as well.
And
It's
those-
getting about $500 a month in returnables, so it actually would have more than. We have too much money for this, but with the return.
Right.
But it helps
But I
offset.
feel
the
this is,
prices.
this is like a program that, you know, again, it's like the residents helping residents. Instead of throwing it, you know, if I wanna give my nickel to the town, I already paid on taxes, I'll just keep the nickel and spend it myself. But if that nickel helps someone else, you know, buy some fuel, then maybe that should be a consideration.
Are those contributions tax deductible or it's just?
Oh, yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. Plan.
Facilities, 23. This guy's like, what am I last?
Always got me last. Sorry, I had CPIT tonight. They finished on time.
Um, On this one, our challenge is basically just that things seem to break occasionally. The one that's been the biggest issue this year is for sprinkler systems. Last year it was more HVAC stuff. We got our contracts for the HVAC, they went up significantly. So Jeff went out and approached some other companies and got quotes, and the one we currently have was still the best of the quotes that we got. So we're trying to find ways to save money, haven't succeeded too much. But we do feel that it may be time to switch sprinkler companies, so Jeff's in the process of trying to get another quote from a different company. We need some significant work done at the library. Jeff's working at that. The generator, we had mice that got into it and caused considerable damage.
Is that the new generator? This one?
I think it's both, actually.
Oh, dear.
So Dennis has now bought some nice smelling stuff that we've got in the generators. We're hoping that'll help with it and things. But that's why the generator line is up quite a bit. Most of this stuff is, or pretty much all the stuff, there isn't a lot we can do, other than when we can, we ask prices from other people and see if we can shop it around, but I think we're getting the best prices we can on these things. You know, overall, we're asking for a 6% increase, but that's by, again, shopping things around and trying to save money where we can.
The only thing I have, Mark, is fuel. Does heating seem a little high to you? Is heating going down compared to what it's been?
We're gas, natural gas.
Oh, natural gas.
So last year we had 52,000 and I upped it to 54,000 for this year.
Bigger work. And we've had a cold winter, so.
Yeah.
And in fact, as Mike knows, there's times when they tell us at the company to take this fire station and the police station the same temperature all the time. This building, if it's say 20 degrees or above at night, we'll let it cool down. So like this room will get cooler after hours and warms up again in the morning. But the company told us that sometimes the system can have trouble getting warm again in the morning. So most of the past month, we've had it overridden, so it stays at a constant temperature, so we don't, so that, which is gonna use, I'm sure, some more natural gas than last year.
All right, as far as the HVAC, the problems you were saying with the sprinkler and all that, is preventative maintenance part of that, those programs, and is that lacking, and is that why we run into problems, or is it just?
I'll let Jeff answer that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think things have been maintained pretty well, especially the HVAC system been taken very good care of. It's just aging. It's almost 20 years old. So we're starting to see some issues with that. And the issues we do have with that are individual based issues. We're not seeing catastrophic failure. We just see a pump go over here. So, you know, the sprinkler system, you'll understand this probably better than anybody, but we have in both of these buildings, we have a wet system and a dry system. And what happens unfortunately with the dry system is they stay dry. So a wet system stays wet, a dry system stays dry. Unfortunately, they have to be tested and flowed every once in a while to inspect them and check them. And so you introduce water into the dry system, and then you drain it out the best you can. So there's just a little bit of water in the dry system. And then it corrodes your piping for the next year until they do it again. And unfortunately, they're required to do that. And so you're just causing this corrosion and rust over time that requires more inspections, more maintenance, adds more leaks. It's kind of a maintenance nightmare. So dry systems are going away where they can, but with the age of this building, it was the technology they had at the time. So we're maintaining it.
Jeff's talking to Siemens right now about coming in and looking at our systems and trying to give us a plan of how much longer they think they'll last and what replacements would be. And then in light of the climate action plan, at last meeting, we'll also have them price out whether there's, another alternative that may be greener and whether it's more expensive or not, things. So that'll help us inform us as we plan the capital improvements in the future.
Is there any buildings in our town that are using more fuel or heating than others? Like, would it be conducive for insulation or some other way to offset fuel costs?
That might be something Siemens can tell us at the same time when they look at things. So we have different fuels in different buildings. Like there's an oil furnace in the rec department snack shack there over in Forsyth Road. Whereas this building and that one are powered with natural gas furnace.
In the libraries, natural gas, and
Public work.
public works is natural gas.
They have heated floors kind of. Yeah, just thinking like those doors open up, close, then heat it and then open and close and
Actually, they're done
they're
pretty well.
Well, I remember Dennis talking about that. We try not to open the doors because that's all they heat out and it takes forever to heat back up from the floors.
So any questions other about the facilities?
What?
All right, it's time for Sky.
Last, but I hope not least, at least I don't think so. Sky Salati, I'm Director of Planning. I think you know everyone here probably, but if we didn't, hello, very nice to meet you. Planning and Development and Codes, we're a 4-person department, made up of myself, my town planner, Josh Franklin, my code enforcement officer, Tom Lister, who is just the best of the best. We're incredibly lucky to have him. I just like to shout him out when I can because he keeps me sane. And Irene Dubril, our planning and code secretary, who is she the longest standing employee now? She's gotta be close. She's gotta be close if she is.
So she probably is.
Yeah, she's been with us for a long time, so she has a lot of knowledge just inherent. So that's who the department is. The planning side staff multiple committees. The planning board is one of the biggest ones. We also do the Historic District Commission, Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, and the Conservation Commission. Hope I didn't already say, I'm sorry, it's late, I've had a long day. So we do a lot with boards and committees, that's a lot of what we do. Tom is our building inspector, our local plumbing inspector, our electrical inspector, our code enforcement officer, those are all state certifications that he has. He is a one-man inspection machine and he does a great job with that. So our revenues come from planning board, historic district applications, and his come from building permits and other kind of miscellaneous permits. They're hard for us to kind of anticipate how they're going to be. My fees are a little bit interesting. If I get a large subdivision, I can have really high revenues, which I will for this year we're in right now. I don't know if I will next year. It's very hard to tell if someone will find land or somewhere to build a multifamily. His has been kind of trending downward with, I think, the increase in building costs due to materials and labor, et cetera, et cetera. Someone talked about it earlier, but figured I'd mention it too. We also help everyone else in the town when they need it. We worked with assessing on GIS mapping. We help them with stuff a lot. Definitely do a little bit with economic development as possible. So we do a good amount, do what we can. And I've been busy with Recode for a really long time. I think making progress on it. We're trying to get everything in order so that when it goes to the people, it has stuff that's thought out and will be a benefit. Committee highlights, planning board, as I said, this is probably our biggest one, planning department, planning board. We've had 8 meetings this fiscal year so far. They've reviewed 6 plans. So when I say they've had 8 meetings and 6 plans, sometimes if something came for a sketch plan and then it came later for a final plan, I call that one plan. It's one project. So the biggest one is for Union Park, which this is a rendering of. This is a 183 circa around unit multifamily plan for the parking lot of McTeague Higby building. You guys are probably aware of it because of the TIF, and you guys are financial people, so you think about those things. We think about it from a planning perspective, so if none of you have seen it, this is their newest rendering. I think it looks fun. We've also done kind of redid a little subdivision out in R1 on Emily Street. Also helped through some amendments to Middlesex Solar Farm, Lee Toyota, and a change of use to 26 Union Park Road. They've been doing a good amount with workshops this year. We've had Recode ones started in July, did a couple, other things happened, holidays, et cetera, et cetera. So as I said, we're working through that process. We're trying to be conscientious and thoughtful and make sure that we're not missing things as we do it and that we're considering it from all angles. I plan to resume Recode workshops in March. Right now, during this year, 2026, they've been doing a couple workshops for things to go to the Maytown meeting. We're making some changes to site plan to make it easier for small projects to get staff level approval so that it can speed up their timelines. And also just kind of reducing their requirements. So we're trying to listen to stakeholders and people telling us that's an issue and make that change. We're also proposing an update to the shoreline zoning ordinance that would bring us into compliance with state regulations. Historic District Commission has actually been incredibly active this year. The first couple of years that I worked here, I feel like they didn't meet much. And when I was doing my slides, I think I had this workshops held thus far. I think it was 1 from last year. So they've had 5 so far this fiscal year. They've done a lot. They've been very good. Those include fence installation on Frost Lane, garage demolition and reconstruction on Winter Street, which is, you can see the picture, just so you have an idea of the things that we look at and what we see. That's pulled from a plan for that. We did some work with a structural addition on Main Street, and on Wednesday, they're going to hear an application for solar panel installation on Elm Street. Zoning Board of Appeals has not met this fiscal year, and I don't think met last fiscal year either, so we don't have people asking for appeals. Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee has held 8 meetings, and I'm sorry, this is a typo, I meant to check this out. They didn't hold a stakeholder workshop, planning board, and then kind of had a joint thing together. I guess it's not really a lie, but I had meant to take it out because I felt like it was more planning board's meeting than theirs. They heard some important information in October on, issues that stakeholders were concerned with Recode. They've been focusing a lot on being at those planning board workshops for Recode to discuss center zones and changes to that and just provide kind of support in that regard. Recently they've been going through the use table to make sure everything makes sense there. Conservation Commission has had 7 meetings thus far, and one of those was an outdoor working meeting where they went to head of Tide Park and removed invasives and, told the public they could come and join them. I don't know if the public did. I think they may have just done that on their own, but that is something they do. They also monitor town easements, and they've been working to propose an update to the 2010 Natural Areas Plan. They've been working on that for a little while. They very recently finished a committee project partnership request form and had it approved by the select board, so they're gearing up to work on that. And I'll get into Conservation Commission a little bit more in a moment. These are the permit information that Tom gave me. So don't ask me too many detailed questions. He filled these in for me and I'm not the code enforcement officer. I can try my best, but this is his information. Passports, we have, I think we did a little bit more in FY 25 than FY 24. She's been pretty steady with that. FY 26, I think holding the same line. The numbers weren't all that different from what I had from last year when I did these slides, so I didn't notice anything there. This is just, you know, the town is kind enough to offer us money to have professional memberships and go to conferences and trainings. So I like to just say, this is what we're about asking for. I know it kind of is rolled into other things, but let you know what we're using it for and how. So we're asking for, you know, a little under 2,000 for conferences and training. One of the big ones is that Josh and I like to go to the Northern New England planning conference. I'm blanking on the full acronym right now. That's always been really good for us, and I've gotten some really great ideas at that conference that I've then used to bring things to the town. So I really like that one. We also memberships. We're both members of the American Planning Association, and I will hopefully be going for my American Institute of Certified Planners this year. Fingers crossed. So that will just be a professional thing I get after my name. And Tom Lister also has some code enforcement trainings in there and his memberships through the state. I'm just less familiar with those because he does a lot of his own stuff. I think Mark already talked about this. We need $10,000 for when Recode is adopted to put it online. We've been rolling this over for years. It's not a new $10,000 I'm spending every year. It's just that Recode keeps getting pushed out, which really love to not have to ask you for that next year, but we're gonna try. And I guess that was on there twice. Whoopsie. So Conservation Commission, there's a little bit of a miscommunication. I thought that the chair would be here to talk to you about this tonight, but her and I had our wires crossed, so I will just give you a slight rundown on this. They're asking for a little bit of money this year. They always get $200 for their Maine Association of Conservation Commissions membership, which the town has given them for a long time. They're also asking for another $200 for equipment to do the invasives removal that I mentioned earlier, kind of gloves, you know, if they need loppers. To me, that seems like a, you know, not very much for them to try to do their bit to keep that at bay in our natural spaces. The big thing that they're asking for is $10,000 for initial consultant work for a natural areas plan update. The graphic that I have included here is from the 2010 natural areas plan, and it's an evaluation of how the land is considered developable. So it shows conservation land, commercial, industrial, mixed use, developable land, developable residential parcels, and major development constraints. So I think those are like environmental, like it's steep slopes, wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. So they are asking for some money to get started on an update for that. They are aware that there are grants out there that could help pay for this, but they would like to get a consultant to help them apply for those grants and find the right ones for their project. Did you include the slide?
Question.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Mark, is there funds in the open space fund? Would that be appropriate in that fund?
And I said, did you put that slide on there to him? Because I put this slide in there and I was going to say, we did look into this a little bit today. It seems likely that they could use the funds that we gather for open space in lieu, which is if you have a subdivision and you are not able to dedicate land, you pay an in lieu fee, which is $6.50 per dwelling unit. And it goes up every year with the CPI. So we have some money, I don't actually know, I think under 100, but over 50.
It's like around 60.
Yeah, somewhere between those two numbers.
How much was it?
I think it's over 50,000 and under 100, I believe, but I think Kathy is checking right now. We haven't done anything with that money the entire time I've been here. It has specifications on how it can be spent. And from the code, it shall be used for dedicated conservation and recreational purposes. Creating a plan probably could fall under that. And the following criteria should be used. Expenditure furthers conservation and or recreation goals, which a plan probably would. And it has to be approved by the Conservation Commission, who would be the asking party, and the Topsham Parks and Recreation head. So I think that it would be possible for this fund to be used, but I am not the budget expert.
I think that's a
So-
good point, yeah.
While Kathy looks at that, we considered trying to use this money last year for the pollinator park out of the transfer station.
73,000.
73. And when we talked to Phil, he said we would need a specific town meeting vote because there isn't anything that allows the select board to distribute the money. So if this group says that we're okay with 10,000 being allocated from that to help pay for a consultant, what we do is put a special article on the warrant to allow 10,000 from the open space fund to be spent for a consultant. So this is, we marked it as an a la carte item. We'll ask you for your decision on it later on. If that's what you recommend, as it comes from the open space fund, would draft a special town meeting article for that. Phil's the town attorney when I was said Phil. Not just a regular person on the street.
And that was planning. I know I kind of rushed through that, so I'm sorry. If anyone has any questions, I can go back a slide or two, back to my stuff. I kind of went through me and then right into conservation questions.
You may have addressed this, but
Yeah.
I missed it, I'm sorry. On your line items for the budget, there's a part-time payroll. It looks like it's never been something, but this year is the first year we're gonna put it in. What are you guys looking to hire part-time somebody for these items?
I'll do that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that is a Mark thing. I did not know I needed to make a slide for that.
So Irene is another person that's long in the tooth. Irene has told.
Yeah, I was very nice earlier. I said she didn't take the longest.
Ready to retire.
Oh, that's not what I thought.
She says she'll probably be done June 30th, if, probably not sooner, but probably June 30th. She's our only person in town that's trained to do passports. At one point, Rod Melanson was trained to do passports, planning director. But to be honest, it really isn't a useful time to have our planning director issuing passports. We've also found that Tom is more and more stretched for his time. So the thought is that when Irene goes, it would make more sense to kind of have someone that does administrative support, plus is able to do some of the in-house permits that can be done without visits. So Tom can focus on the stuff that you leave the building to visit on. And that too, and maybe get that person trained as a licensed plumbing inspector. It becomes too not to make sense to have that person doing passports. So Irene's looking for a little something to do in retirement. She said she might, I talked to her, would you be interested in say 3 hours a week of work just to do passports? And she said that she would be. So the thought is we would add a part-time position just to focus on passports so that we're not having people that are trained for other things and playing in the office doing passports. And the revenues from the passports is actually, I think it's like 20 bucks a passport. It's pretty good. And
I thought it was 25. But
I think it's 30.
I was gonna say, I don't know.
35.
some days she'll do as many as 10. And sometimes maybe it'll just be 5 or 4. If we want to keep that as a service, I think this is the best way to do that, would be to have Irene doing it, as opposed to trying to train other people to do passports. The only other thing I can think of would be trying to train the secretaries of the police department to do passports. But it can't be anyone downstairs because you can't have access to vital records. So our people in the tax clerk's office can't do it. And it's hard to find a good position to do it.
So with Irene retiring, she's gonna wanna probably have some vacation time, so maybe it's good to have a backup from that person in the police department, so that whatever the hours are for passports, that at least someone would be a backup.
And what we've been doing right now is she just closes the office if she's not available.
Oh.
Fine.
But that's a potential too, so is to train someone else, because Irene may not want to do it forever too, so we can also.
Well, 2 things, Mark, a lot. Does the post office in Brunswick do it still?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the town clerk in Brunswick does them, that office. And also, it's very easy to do them online, even your renewables now, it's just super easy. So I'm just saying, maybe it's time not to do them.
I don't think you can do renewals here, it's just new passports, renewals, you have to do, I think, online.
I
or-
can speak to that a teeny bit as someone who listens to her do it. I'm not a passport agent and I do not have the capacity to, and no one in my office does, quite honestly, we need.
You don't play one on.
Yeah,
TV.
I just wanna say that, we can't really keep doing it. But you need to come into a passport agent the first time because you need to have them check
Yeah.
your, and it's okay, Ruth, if you don't wanna do it, I just wanted to note that you do need to come into someone
Yeah.
the first time. Renewals you cannot do with someone, you have to do yourself. I will say something Irene does, which I think is really lovely, is she's very open to questions. I give her, I give my business card out and say, call this number, and then go for the secretary or find Irene, she'll answer the questions. She doesn't have her own business card. She'll answer questions, she'll look things over for people, and we are one of the only places where you can do a walk-in situation, you don't need an appointment. I don't really have a pony in this race, quite honestly. I know Irene's interested in this, but from my department perspective, it's not a huge thing to me. But I do just wanna note that those are some things that she does, and those are some of the requirements of passports that
Yeah.
I overhear.
So is the intention that she'd move to a different department and not be under planning anymore?
She probably would still actually do them out of that office, because there's a desk that she could use for 3
But-
hours.
The other thing, it's gotta be consistent with when you can do it, posted hours and not, we're not in today. Those are the kind of things that it's gotta be more consistent than it
I guess the kind of the way I look at the passports, I don't consider it an essential Topsham service.
isn't,
And I would be more than happy to go with what you said, and let's just not do it.
right?
But if we want to try to provide the service to our residents, this is a way I think we could kind of do it without having to have planning directors issue passports.
Oh, I don't think planning director should, no.
But, some people say it's hard to find a place to get their passport, and people do compliment her, and it's very nice, and
I
you know,
think she
maybe
is,
they can't,
yeah.
maybe she's not there every Wednesday, but when she is there, they feel like she treats them well and they're well respected.
So they may be here for other things too, just the one-stop shop.
So if we want to keep the service, this is a way I thought if we could try to do it, that would pretty much break even, and,
Yeah, the way we put it in there, we can just take it out, so we're taking out the revenue and we're taking out the expenses, so the way it is right now is not really, it's not impacting any tax
No,
You
calculation.
know,
Yeah,
Mark, you bring up a good point, and I was just thinking about that, as you mentioned it, it's like, I'm curious. My question is going to be is, are we doing this as a service to the town residents, or are we doing it as a revenue stream?
So-
But then I'm thinking, it's like, well, how many, you don't have to be a resident of Topsham,
probably half of them are.
you know? So how much, how many residents are coming from other towns? So in that case, it turns into more of a revenue stream. Vice, a service that's of value, because you gotta do it once, like just commenting on the renewal, I did renewal my passport, yeah, it's real easy. Just take your own picture of your phone, just says meet a certain criteria, you upload it, a couple of weeks later, you have a new passport. Anyway, but like you said, I kind of agree with what you said, it looks like it's more probably at this point. A revenue stream, maybe not a major one, but if it's not, in this case, we're just not, burdening a department or putting extra responsibilities on someone who doesn't really need the responsibilities. So why not just go with it? That's my feeling.
My intent on the question really was more, if that's gonna be sustainable budgetary item moving forward. I would assume that upon her retirement, we would get another full-time secretary that may also do passports.
But we're trying to shift that position to be
Less.
less that and more
I
an
see.
assistant to Tom.
So we're looking at a different, okay, that clarifies the point of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't speak about that. We are hoping to have the person that replaces Irene come in at maybe a slightly higher technical space. Redo the title of the job from planning and code secretary. I think it's just planning secretary officially, to something like planning and codes, administrator, something along those lines, where there's a little bit more responsibility baked in. Maybe they're reviewing permits for costs. They can give people the numbers at the desk. They can take some of the workload off of Tom. Mainly just continue what they're doing for Josh and I, which is managing Zooms, meetings, notes, you know, our finances and stuff. We do need kind of a hybrid situation, but as it is right now, when Irene does passports, she's not super available for the other aspects of the department, and we'd like to shift that a little bit. Because she's been here so long, her wages are pretty high. So if we get someone with a little bit more technical experience, maybe redo the position a little bit, it comes out basically as a wash because she's got such longevity on her side. We can hire someone a little bit higher with a little bit more, you know, maybe technical capabilities. And it shouldn't impact your the payroll at all, which is why there wasn't anything in here about that.
What are the current passport hours right now?
Wednesday from 1 to 3 and Thursdays from 1:30 to 5:30.
And Irene would work 6 hours or just 3 hours?
I'm afraid if we paid her 6 hours, we get to the point that it doesn't break even. So I'm proposing
One day?
1 day for 3 hours.
The convenience of having posted hours is, was it you who brought that up? Is people take time off from work or they shift their lunch schedule and they arrive and there's a sign saying, sorry, we're closed.
Right.
That's not good business practice. So, you know, if we can at least have scheduled hours and then have a sign that says, so sorry, you know, due to illness, the passport office has been closed, people will accept that. But to just, you know, people have to flex their hours and they can come in those 3 hours if they work.
And I'd let her choose the day. And if this is her only job, you know, I can't imagine in fact, I tell her that if you want this job, tell us the day you will be here for 3 hours for 45 out of the 52 weeks of the year, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, I think sure we could get her to commit to regular.
Any other planning questions? Perfect. Thanks, guys.
That's it for tonight.
And that was backed up, that's a good sign.
If Kathy's done, we're all.
And you know,
So tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, there may be some leftovers, but no fresh stuff, so eat first if you don't want leftovers.
Wednesdays, we're gonna come.
Yeah, I don't think it will.
Talking about.
Never know.